What's up, guys? Welcome to Operation B, the podcast. I am your host, Jamie Thurber, and I am here to take you on a journey of deepening, of expansion, of understanding more about who you are and why you're here and how to operate in an optimal way that allows you to do what you want to do, feel how you want to feel, take care of yourself truly, and support everything that your heart desires. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Operation B. I'm your host, Jamie Thurber, and today we're doing something brand new and different. I'm excited to let you know that we're going to start having the occasional guest on the show. And so I thought about who I wanted to have, and I wrote down a really beautiful list. And I thought it would just be right for the first guest to be Tony. So introducing my partner in life, Tony Twist.
I forced her into it.
And so I was thinking about, how do I intro Tony? That's a big question. So for those of you who don't know, we've been together for over 10 years, engaged for a year and a half, almost, something like that. Yeah, we're getting married next year in 26. So Tony played professional hockey. He is also one of the most intelligent humans I've ever met in my life. When it comes to like anything health related, he talks like a doctor. Like Kelly Chase was just telling people the other night, he literally speaks to me and I think I'm talking to my doctor. He calls my doctor directly on the phone and has conversations with him. Tony's also owned several businesses, done real estate investing, helped lots of people through tragedies, through divorces, through addiction, through lots of things. I've watched him grow. I've watched him turn into various versions of himself, which I think is a big part of why I wanted him to come in, because he's also watched that for me. Currently owns a glass installation company, keeps him very busy, lots of manual labor, which I think is why he is the person that he is. So we'll talk a lot about that too, just about focusing on your health and why and how he taught me that, because it was never part of my world before. So what an intro.
Good intro.
I could have just talked for another hour just about.
You glazed the surface.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. So one of the things that I thought with, especially on season 2 of OpDo, or OpB, GC, OpDo, OpB, they're both still in there.
English, please.
Operation
I
Do,
know.
Operation B. So I think one of the biggest things, especially now as I've started talking about it more, that I think you have a unique insight on is you've been present for all of the stages of this. You've been present for the girl who you never even knew was sick, to the one you were like, that's not real. And then you watched it happen and were like, oh, wait, what? What is happening? You know, and so you've been there for all of it.
Not real to not right.
Right.
That's what that went to.
Yeah. I was speaking to a friend and she mentioned, she's like, he's been there for all of the death and rebirth cycles. And there's been a lot of them.
And it's ongoing.
Yeah, still happening.
There's still going to be ceremonies.
Right. Funerals for parts of self.
Yeah, we're going to have to burn some candles and use some witch's breath or some smoky thing, sage.
So it seems like these moments that happen, they tend to hit the pinnacles where I'm either in the driveway with you or on the kitchen counter. I don't know if you've noticed that, but those are like the two places.
Yeah, well, I mean, we get small conversations during the day. Mm-hmm. So you're busy, I'm busy, and we're doing best we can.
So I think my question would be, or what would be interesting to know is kind of like what your version or like what it's been from your point of view, seeing me go through the chronic illness and all the ups and downs and sorting it out and all that.
It's an easy one. The pain comes from watching you. You know, I'm not having to go through any of that, and I have no stepping stone, no platform that I've ever seen, that I've ever been part of, and with anybody, including myself, and frustrated, because you're frustrated. Mm-hmm. The amalgamation of all the things that come together that makes this, a real battle, it does compound, and it compounds for you, and I'm easy with it, but it's you that is upset. I mean, I can roll with whatever, but you get upset and you get frustrated because you want to get and do things, and And I would like to too, but only when you're healthy. I don't even think about, I plan our dinners, got to be a little early, got to
Mm-hmm.
be home. The only thing that keeps you in stride is routine.
Mm-hmm.
And if we found anything out, routine is the best way to keep yourself from
Yeah.
getting sick or sleeping or just not feeling good.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. So I think that's something that I know when I talk about being sick, it's interesting because there is this one gentleman that has been um, a supporter of everything online on Facebook, and his wife actually. I don't ask. Just like I'm glad when people don't ask me, like, what's wrong with you? Because especially for me, it's not an easy answer. I don't have like a diagnosis per se that makes it simple to
There's no
explain.
definitive for you.
Right. And so he always comments the most beautiful things as a partner who's watched his wife go through this stressful up and down roller coaster of frustration. And I think my work with Jesse, so Jesse's my coach who Tony speaks with also. I think through my work with Jesse, something we both had to learn together was that I needed to be allowed to be frustrated. I needed to be allowed to let that out, and you had to learn how to hold that. And there's really no way for you to fix it.
No, I quickly learned that, well, I mean, quickly might be an exaggeration, but ears are sometimes the best.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
listen, and if there's a reply that's needed, you'll make it abundantly clear. And sometimes it hurts. Sometimes my tongue bleeds.
Because you were biting your tongue and you can't say
Yeah,
things. Yeah,
right.
yeah. And it's I think in me, like retrospect, thinking back about times when I do. So kind of what happens, guys, is sometimes like when a person who has chronic illness or has that much mess kind of happening in their system is oftentimes when you reach that pinnacle moment where it's so big, where you're crying or you're having a panic attack or whatever's happening, whether it's you're in a ball on the floor or you're shaking in the kitchen, like your brain isn't functioning at the same capacity as it would if none of those things were happening. It's like you become incapable necessarily of even making sense to an extent. And I remember in the very beginning, when it started getting really bad, when my body was having those big panic attacks, I didn't really understand what was going on. You certainly didn't understand what was going on. And so there was a time where you when you said this, you never meant it's all in your head. What you meant was that my mind was making it worse.
100%. Your mind was making it worse. But also, let's take into account every morning you got up. I mean, every morning you felt sick. Couldn't even brush your teeth because the toothpaste made you vomit.
Yeah.
And that happened for years.
Yeah.
And that's not normal.
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
like the comedian Tom Segura said, that's how you're supposed to do the toilet. That's the only thing I know what to do. When his
Yeah.
wife says you need to go to a doctor,
Yeah.
if you don't know, you don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, that's been I think a huge part of this past year, especially was me recognizing how much of the way like I knew it wasn't normal, but I didn't know it wasn't normal at the same time.
And that's what I'm pointing out. I'm pointing
Mm-hmm.
that out. There's a lot of things that you just rolled and trudged through, and a lot of that was, hey, I don't know how. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's ridiculous to have to do that, but you just never thought of it.
Yeah.
And when you recognized it, it became a whole new issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Something I was thinking about this morning driving in was if you flash back to the time where, like you said, you watched me walk around the house in the morning gagging while getting ready and putting makeup on and getting dressed and going to work and still going to work and like, staying there for 10 hours and coming home. Um, and it was back in the day back then when I would like the moment my head hit the pillow, I would pass out. I do miss that part of back then. I do miss being able to sleep like that.
There's
But
only one reason why, so you don't really miss it.
yeah. So I was thinking about that. What was it like from your perspective? And maybe at that time you didn't necessarily even realize it, but you watched me push through that every day going to work. But then when I started my own company and I traveled a lot those first few years, watching it, like did you ever think like what the hell is she doing? Because I would just get sick every single time.
I don't know how many conversations. Yeah, every day and every time you did go out of town, we had the same conversations, hoping for a different result. And I think that's a definition of insanity: doing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing 1,000 times and expecting a different result. And um, that's what you were doing. You were
Yeah.
still getting it done, but to the peril of your health, and that would run you another 2 or 3 weeks to come back, or even longer, a month trying to repair from that.
Yeah. No, I know. And that was like, I remember something a lot of people also don't realize unless you've been in the situation. And I know it's still difficult for you to grasp as much, but when you're the person who's sick, you apologize a lot because you feel like a burden. You feel like everything's really heavy. Like I'm keeping you up at night, or I'm calling you in when you're out there working on something because you're my human living safety blanket. Or I go on a trip that's really great. And I meet all these great people and it's amazing. And then I come home and I'm down for 2 weeks. A lot of people don't talk about the side of it where, as the person who's sick, you feel so guilty and so bad about the way you're impacting everyone around you more than anything.
Just got that text last night, and I responded to you.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, there's no reason to feel guilty. It is what it is. And the quicker you get your head around the fact that you're first and everybody else is second, is when you're gonna find your best leaps and bounds forward. And you're getting better at it, but still, you have your moments, and obviously, your moments are well founded, but inconsequential to me.
Yeah.
Meaning it doesn't bother me. It bothers you.
Yeah.
But then it bothers me because it bothers you, but it doesn't bother me.
It's like a cycle.
You know what I mean? But the only reason it bothers me because you get upset. I'm not upset.
Yeah. And it's funny is that my logical brain knows that, but the parts of me that are in total fight or flight panic mode, they have to say it. It's like if I don't say it, it makes it worse. It's wild.
When you get in that that fight or flight mode is different.
Yeah, it is.
It's different eyes. It's a different voice. It's a different person. Completely a different person.
Yeah. My mom, for many years, my mom was the only person who could tell. And then it was just a couple friends, like, because my face changes when my body, what we used to be called, what we were told for so many years was hypoglycemia was kicking in. Now we know it's a pile of other things, but like when my system hits that spot, my face changes. And I realized that never wanted anyone to ever see that or know it. But my mom always did because she was the one who advocated for me my whole life. And everyone's like, she's fine. And I was like, no, she's not fine. But I remember very clearly when you finally were like, what the hell? This is not normal. And you could look at me and know. And it took a couple years just because you're a pro athlete, right? So your body is your business. And so I remember you not understanding that people, because you were also surrounded by pro athletes and you've done this your whole life. Would you start skating at 3?
I think so, somewhere around there.
And so, like, training in the gym at 10,
12 in the gym like a rat.
Right. So I remember the time where your brain had to really adjust to the fact that my experience was so wildly different than anything you had been around.
That's because the experience that you were having, I, again, had no jumping off point. I had nothing to build upon because it was a completely different set of circumstances, along with a completely different human, female versus male. So, all the things I've dealt with have been on a male platform, not on a female platform.
Sure.
And all the other intricacies of feelings, emotions, and how it impacted you as a learning process. And the curve wasn't that fast.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that fast, but I think part of the reason why, for me, it's not because I think a lot of partners are not understanding, and I get why they're not, because like you said, it's hard to relate.
Well, the biggest thing and the easiest thing is being open about it and sharing it. You have to interchange. You have to exchange the sentences many times. You got it. If you don't, then it creates a whole bunch of other problems.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to get better.
No.
Relationship, you, me. So being open and being willing to have dialogue.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, even if it's for 5 minutes, it does make a difference.
I catch myself sometimes thinking about the way our relationship is and how it's been impacted by your empathy. It's not that you didn't have empathy, but it's a totally different ballgame now than it was when I first met you. You used to have more empathy for people that were struggling to like show up and be an adult human, but not anybody else. And so, but I noticed about our relationship that the empathy that you've created I often think, oh, this just exists because I've been sick. But then I think, okay, well, if that's the one perk that comes out of this shitty situation, then good for us because so many other people don't have that. And I just think that even if you're not having a person in your life that has an illness, that should be the standard, but it's not.
Well, it's the standard for you, but I think that the empathetic word and the empathy feeling doesn't stretch much more beyond you.
No, I
I
understand.
mean, the immediate family, and that's it.
Yeah. When I learned recently with Jessie, my coach, where she was talking about enmeshment, and I recorded a little bit about this in a previous episode, where I was like, what does that mean? And she explained it to me about how you just become so intertwined with like every decision and every move that your loved ones make. And I was like, you don't do that? She was like, no, it's hard to hold that up for more than one, maybe two relationships. And it was mind boggling because our family does not do that. Like our whole family is so intertwined in every single person's everything. My whole life on both sides of the family, and I have big amounts of aunts and uncles and cousins. And so I remember that moment. But you and my brother actually are great examples of adjusting the way that you have relationships because you're still good to your people you love or like even or come in contact with, but that doesn't mean that you're like at night worrying about whether or not their refrigerator actually went out and they're suffering with no food or something. Like I used to do that constantly. It's wild.
You picked out some of the most awkward and weird things, and you continue to think of. Then you think of other things, like a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh, stop.
I promise you, some of those things you think about were like, what? You can't do anything about it anyways,
I know.
even if it happens. So why have that emotion? Because it's wearing you out and turning into a different emotion that makes you sick, and then it cascades into something else. I know full well that's not something you can control on a daily basis, but you're working at it, and it's a lot
Yeah.
better. You've isolated uh, a lot of that, and not taking on other people's pains and burdens. That's another big problem too. You always want to give and be that person. Well, plans and write it all out and get everybody together. And thank you for not doing that anymore. You're taking care of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how we were raised. My grandma was that way. My mom was and is that way. She's getting better because she watches and listens to me, and it's an adjustment period. But one thing that I think is also really interesting about our relationship is because we grew up in very different worlds. Not
Polar
only because
opposites.
polar opposites,
Polar
not only because
opposites.
you were in another country, but so Tony's from Canada, born and raised, and it's not even that, but the family dynamic, the dynamic in the towns that you grew up in, the hockey life, then as a young adult traveling everywhere as an athlete, like everything you got exposed to were things that little Midwest Jamie, who had been on a plane like twice prior to meeting you, two or three times maybe, and only to one place, California. That was the only place.
Disneyland.
Yeah, oh, and one time to Florida. Um, for a cruise when I was 18. That was the first time I was on an airplane. But anyways, I remember you. I think that that's made me a much better person, and I know for you, it helps you relate, even if you don't want to, but relate more to people who aren't just like you, or people that you play with.
When you get locked into that mode, that particular pace,
Mm-hmm.
and you sometimes get blinders on because you're with the same people doing the same things. So you mesh together very well because I know it's time to go left, they know it's time to go right, and we're gonna hit it. There's not even conversations anymore. So the environment that you presented when we're traveling and how the process, we got to be plenty hours early. You got to pack 20 days before, and but the build up to that to the actual flight, I think, puts more pressure on you than anything else because you've been doing this for 20 days, and I look at you, go, we're 2 weeks away. Well, I got to get planned.
But yeah, like my brain like genuinely couldn't. I remember the first time I did that, and you were like, "We're not going to like the middle of the desert, Jamie. There are stores there. If you forget something, we can go buy it." But my brain just couldn't compute that, and I was because I believe I was raised in a way where you used what you had, and we didn't have extra money. And it's not that you were like, "Oh, I can just buy whatever I want." That was never the point. The point was if you forget your toothpaste, we can go buy toothpaste. Like, there's no reason to freak out about that. But my brain like could not even get work done unless I knew I had a list of what needed to be packed and I was prepared. It was just wild.
That's known for everything you're doing. At least you're not making so many lists
No,
anymore.
I don't make lists anymore.
There
Like the
was
only, yeah,
you had lists
for my
about the
list.
lists,
I did.
about the list that you need to make a list for, about the
Mhm.
list that you need on Thursday.
And you know what that is? People who are
In
listening who
6 months.
I know, I know. People who are making lists who are listening that are that way. I used to say it was to get the stuff out of my head. But what I realized was it was actually a weird control tactic of me holding on to things really tightly because I couldn't control anything else. And it was a way for me when I realized, like, so a couple years ago when we had to slow down my life, I realized that pressure, what I refer to as pressure. For me, that's like the easiest way to describe it. So those lists, the everything for my family, my parents, the dogs, the house, the Tony, who never has really ever asked me for things, but I decide to do them for him anyways. All of that, the business, the clients, the things my clients don't even pay for or ask for, but I want to do, and all that stuff created an immense amount of pressure. And then the standard that I hold myself to has changed. Still great standard, but what I was holding myself to before was wild.
What you're holding yourself to before was not something somebody in that job area or space could perform.
Mhm.
And the expectations that you set for yourself are so extraordinarily high. Well, I used to be able to do that. I used to be able, yeah, but it's not used to be time anymore. You have to change. Your standards and the professionalism's got better.
Mhm.
Why?
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to overachieve for everybody. You're sticking to the guidelines that you put forward for them and for yourself. And you will step out of course, once in a while, but because you've isolated that and made a concerted effort to do what you're supposed to do, and when you feel like it, or you make a phone call to me and you go, I got a massage at 3, and then I got this and this. Should I go? No, you shouldn't, because it's not gonna pan out. You already knew the answer,
Mm-hmm.
but you just wanted somebody to reinforce it. You wanted to feel good about the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And soon enough, you'll always feel good about your answer. You won't have to call me, because
I
that's
know.
that's where we need to get to.
Yeah. And it is getting better. And
It way better.
I think the piece about that for me is that that comes back to something I was like taught to do as a child. You don't let people down. And for me, like canceling that appointment, this is what people understand. I put crazy amounts of pressure on myself because I didn't want to inconvenience anyone else ever. Never, ever, ever could I be an inconvenience to you. And so for me to cancel an appointment for someone, even though literally going to that appointment was going to make me have to work like 4 times more the next couple of days, I would do it anyways because I felt bad.
And then your next appointment would end up suffering at some point because you pushed yourself. So
Yeah.
again, regulate your body and regulate your time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you didn't have strict schedules and lists, but I mean, you had 3 days compressed into one,
Yeah.
and you're crossing them off, and you're upset because you only got 5 out of the 20 done. I said,
Yeah.
but those five would contain 3 hours of work each. So, again, setting expectations, realistic ones, you gotten much better at, and
Mm-hmm.
the quality of your work's gotten a lot better because you're not pushing yourself here, here, and here, and then at the end of the week, wore out.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing with that too is I never wanted to really accept how bad things had gotten with my body. So that was my way of avoiding it.
Amongst other things.
Yeah, for sure.
Amongst other things.
Mm-hmm.
And those other things tie into that too, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
They all tie together. You're doing much better managing time management and emotion management, because instead of, if you start to feel sick and you go, oh my God, did I eat enough? Did I drink enough? Why am I sick? There's got to be a reason. Something I did, there must have been something. Hold on, it's not always something you did, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
accept that particular, if you're not feeling it, it's not relatable to anything you did. It's just, that's life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're at. And that was difficult for you to understand also.
Yeah, the moment that I realized that other people, what I used to refer to as normal people, don't feel great all day, every day, I was like, I'm sorry, what? That's a thing? Because I would think I remember it was Dr. What's his name? It was Dr. Lang, my GI doctor, who was like, the goal here is not 100%, Jamie. There's something wrong. Like, you're not, 100% is not the goal. The goal is more better days than bad days. The goal is even if I get you to 80%, I'm super happy with that. And I was like, what? And I still have to work on that regularly.
You know why? And I because in a few of the jobs that you worked, everybody put the show on. I mean, everybody wanted they, whether it hurt them or didn't hurt them, or
Yeah.
they put the show on. It wasn't just so we all assumed you're doing well,
Mm-hmm.
but you're all doing the same thing in the dark.
Beating
And
ourselves up.
yeah,
Yeah.
horrendously.
Mm-hmm.
And there was never a small conversation. Should have had a little salary disclosure. You know, that's a hockey term where you talk about your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about it. You know, how do you feel? Well, you ladies never did that at all. You feeling like this? I don't know why. Guys always exchange.
Yeah, which is usually the opposite.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what's funny.
Except for health. The health thing is a whole
Yeah.
different bird.
Yeah.
My buddy could be getting a divorce, we go out golfing, and I'd come home and say, "Hey, he's getting a divorce." He'd ask why. I said, "I don't know. It didn't come up because I'm not asking. He's not telling.
Right.
Curiosity ends there."
Yeah. The level of relationships has definitely changed in my life too, or like the way I approach them. Shifting gears just a small amount here. Yeah.
Mhm.
Remember when we couldn't figure out reverse in my Jeep when I first bought it?
Oh, I didn't realize you had to go into seventh all the way down deep.
I know. Oh, my dad couldn't
All the
figure
way
it out
down
either.
deep in the right. That's the most awkward place for an
It's
R.
over, down. That's the 6 speed of my Jeep.
And
The
there's
reverse.
6 and R was for race. That was
Well,
seventh gear.
and I didn't have a cheat sheet. The shifter was aftermarket, so no cheat sheet.
I found it at least.
So, I know you love
I
it.
hate that Jeep.
I know. You hate it.
It's small. It hurts.
I love it so much.
Don't buy a Jeep.
Yeah, everybody, he says that until no other vehicle that we own can get out of our driveway.
Then I'm
And
forced
every
to.
single time it snows, but
Now
the Jeep does.
I'm forced to. It's not because I like it.
Sorry that it's helpful. The Jeep was not made for someone your size.
No,
Not at all.
I don't think for your size either.
No, it's, yeah.
5'9", 10, 11. You're really, oh,
I like it. Anyway, I like to drive it. So, something that I know everybody in my life likes to talk about when they watch us, especially when I say watch us, like they observe parts of our relationship, is that we just work really well. And that was not by accident. I think that's the other thing.
it was hard work.
Lots of hard work all the time, still hard work.
Well, I benefit that to you because I changed a lot.
I know,
A lot of things.
I had my notes saying, how you shifted too. People think you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
I shifted as the relationship shifted and learned paying attention to the smaller things that made a difference, and those smaller things that made a difference dealt with the bigger ones that were actually happening. So not only did you cut it down here, release the load up here.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a while. Obviously, you always got to remind me.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remind me of little things, which is easy. You know, like me, stop it. You know what you're doing? Yeah, okay, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We have discussions and we have heated debates, but when they're over, they're over.
Mm-hmm.
Never brought up again. I am really upset. I'm going to go to the garage right now because I need to, and then come back in, smile on the face. 5 minutes later, just had to get that out,
Mm-hmm.
so you can speak like a normal human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do the same thing. It works wonderfully.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing too, is we do communicate really well, even though we are very different people and we look at a lot of things very differently as far as emotions and empathy, and like the way my life and my business is extremely emotional. It has to be. I'm very tapped in and tuned into everyone I'm with. That's why I'm good at what I do. You are too, but in a totally different way.
Hmm?
You're reading the room for other reasons, and that's how you navigate your business, and you always have.
That's how you navigate a dressing room too.
Yeah.
So it's the game and arena thing. It doesn't change.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could tell, just this last weekend, right? We were with a bunch of guys that you haven't seen, some of them in 20 years. And the respect factor between you and those guys, well, first of all, I never feel safer than when I'm in a room with any guys that played hockey in like 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I feel like I'm with family members, whether I just met them or didn't. And it's always great. But to watch you guys together, it's cool because I've always known where that comes from in you. And then I see you with guys you've been seeing 20 years, and that brotherhood is there again. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Without losing a beat,
Mm-hmm.
without not even, the beat's not even lost.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful feeling, and it's very relatable for us as players. But there's so many people that haven't had the opportunity to work under the cover in the guise of a team. The functionality of the team is directly related to the sex of the success of those 20 players, and as a consequence, those 20 players are everything to you for the time that you played together, and relationships are formed, and then the follow-up, just like what just happened here for Chaser. There wasn't a beat lost. Everybody that I spoke to was like, I saw them yesterday and it's been 20 years.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me
Yeah.
happy. I
It's
was telling Jesse, my coach, about this, and we talk a lot about relational situations. So when you're healing your nervous system, which isn't something I've had to teach Tony to, when you're healing your nervous system, there are, we call triggers, right? But what happens when you start to unravel some of those things, maybe you can find places that now we're going to refer to as glimmers of moments where instead of having like a that's gonna happen, instead I have this, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, and then it happens. I'm like, ooh, I'm magic. It happened like 3 times last week. But I was telling her about being at the hockey game on Saturday, and we pointed out some parallels. There's all these situations over the past 6, 9 months, probably, where the times that I have gone out with, we've gone out in the evening, it's been with people from the Blues alumni. And I don't get sick. Like the event we went to when Chaser got inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame, it's like the whole night was so inspiring. And everyone in the room had that teammate camaraderie love for each other, whether it was a hockey player or a race car driver or that woman who was a tennis coach in college tennis coach. Like the feeling in the room was so genuine and so beautiful that now I'm realizing that some of the things that were pressure in my world, and I think you already knew this because you were doing it too, it wasn't even that it was the output, it was the people, it was the room, it was the situations, it was the obligations that we thought we had, or like the things we thought we needed to do for other people that really weren't great relationships for us to have near us. And now
agreed.
that we don't have them, I think it helps a ton.
The weight of any room, if you're observant of it, or you're susceptible to the weight of the room, and you definitely are. Me, not so much, but and you be able to adapt, the adaptability of the weight of the room. Sometimes it's plausible that you can't get there, and when you can't get there, that's when stuff goes wrong. Panic sets in. You're trying to control the emotion. You can't find the right vibe, and as that gets worse and worse, we got to go.
And the permission slip to say I need to go,
You don't
and
need one.
but for myself, it's permission slip for myself. But there's a layer of understanding with you to where, whether it's the so simple as you wanted to stop and get Taco Bell the other night, and I was like, no, I need to go home right now, and you're like 10 minutes. I'm like, no, I need to go home right now. Like, okay, so we go home. But that was me listening to my body. A year ago, I wouldn't have, and I would have crumbled in that car in that 10 minutes. I knew it in my system, just like because my body was just done. I needed to go home. I needed to be horizontal. Just like a couple of years ago, we went to, I don't know what it was, event down at the casino. And we were there and we were starting to eat dinner. And I was like, I have to go. I can't be here anymore. And you were like, okay, I do have to be here because I have to be on stage.
Right.
And they are paying me to do said thing. So I can't leave. And I was like, okay. But you're like, take the car and I'll get a ride home. And it was the fact that I have that space where, believe it or not, that one always wasn't the case in our relationship, but it also wasn't the case for me with anyone. But a lot of relationships, husbands don't do that. Wives don't allow that.
They also don't ask.
That's true.
You
Or
know,
in the
it's all.
right way,
I
probably.
mean, it's unfair to put it all on the males. Of course, they're a big part of it, but
Yeah, both of them,
again,
really.
having the conversations and being able to read. Yeah, I can only know what you tell me. I
Right.
can read faces and I can read body gestures, but what's really underneath the body gesture? I could be reading it like a text message. Oh, you. Oh, that's not. And then you call them. That's not what I meant. Oh, now that I'm reading it that way, I understand. Well, most reading faces and body gestures the same way, or the tone of a voice isn't directed in that sentence. You think, oh, what? Why are you getting heated with me? Well, I wasn't. That was something. But you don't have that opportunity, don't talk things out.
Yeah. I think the opportunity too to that you listen and take into perspective that even though it might not be, and this I'd say really came into play in the last couple of years, you may not have a way to fully relate, like because you've not felt it or experienced it. But instead of, you used to get very frustrated when you didn't understand or you couldn't empathize or at all with the things that I was saying or feeling. And now I see what happens. It's like a very beautiful like sense of calm that you have, or you realize you don't have to.
Oh, that's the biggest thing I could tell any male. You don't have to fix things. It's not your job. When you have to fix something, you'll be told.
Yeah.
Keep your mouth shut and listen. But when I say listen, you got to listen. You're not, don't just hear. You have to listen.
Yeah.
Because there will be a quiz later. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be a week, but the quiz is coming. It might be 30 days, it could be 6 months, but it was an important answer you should have. So remember those answers to that quiz.
Yeah, that's a thing, probably. This is also a very asked question for people who observe you. And, I get to meet a lot of people. It's funny, like I just met a guy the other day that you used to work with 20 years ago, right? So he knows the Tony right out of the NHL, or even in the NHL, which is a totally different guy than I'm marrying.
Bad version. Uh,
The other day I was talking to Monica Adams actually, and she's known you for a really long time too, because she's been in TV forever.
yeah.
And I said that we were talking about people growing up in like different age ranges and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that's real. Because Tony and I we have not have worked when he was in his early 20s,
No
late
chance.
20s. And she was like, she goes, no, I know that you wouldn't.
No chance. Absolutely no chance.
But I think so. So with that, with people being observant, me meeting other people who knew you a long time ago, nobody ever has anything bad to say, or people enjoy you, but the energy they knew of you is very different than who and how you act the majority of the time now. And so one of the things was how you balance being, not only you are embodied in every part of you a very masculine man, and the world sees you as a masculine, powerful, like almost aggressive man. But that is not how you actually interact with people. This is gonna be a two-part question, so I'll say that. Like, how do you feel like it makes it difficult for you, or are you always trying to kind of explain yourself, or having to watch yourself, or what do you think?
I'm never explaining myself. That's not part of it. And I believe that after so many years of dealing with it, I give opportunity to open up a line of dialect that's not directly related to that particular question or that person's perception, because I can read them when they're looking at me or the questions that they're firing out. The longer we speak, the longer the question's irrelevant because it's being answered itself. And that's the best way to deal with it, because answering it directly doesn't, show by action and not by words. And if there's opportunity again to meet or to exchange a business transaction or whatever, and by the second time you meet, you recognize for what the question wouldn't come up again.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't.
Okay.
So it's by directly, not saying anything, but by acting directly.
Another aspect of that question is, do you, because you've been in other relationships obviously, do you find it, because I'm a pretty independent, not pretty, I am very independent. I have my own sense of power. I have my own abilities to deal with my own things. Do you feel like there's ever, or was there ever an adjustment that you needed to make as a man who also is like that way, very independent, takes care of everything, wants to also then take care of everyone else? I always laugh about the time you used to bring lots of large comforters to my house, as like you thought you were supporting me, and I'm like, I have no room for these blankets in my little bitty house. It doesn't have a basement. Like, stop it. But you would show up with large things all the time. So it's, my question is though, do you think that you had to make like a conscious adjustment to be with somebody that's like I am?
No, the independence is always the best.
Okay.
Those things that I was doing was ones that I thought would be a cool surprise.
You're a gift giver.
Yeah, so a cool surprise. It's, I don't know, it's never anything big. It's something
Yeah.
small, but then I realized that that small thing does not have room in your world, because this goes here in this bench, or and this one goes over here. But there's a spot here, but this is not going to work there. Okay, all right, then you got it all planned out. So again, asking prior, not telling you exactly what it is. You'll be able to smell out what I'm trying
Yeah.
to get to you. But that's it's also another good learning curve,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I remember
big time learning curve
yeah, we
because you
argued over a couple pieces of furniture a few times because I'm like, what? I don't know what you want me to do with this. I have no room for this table. Well, I thought it was really nice. I'm like, it is really nice, but like,
again, I'm not watching it, and I'm not negotiating myself and navigating around it, and you are. So again, just thought it was nice.
yeah, because you don't do that now, so that's why it
No,
was
I
an
quit doing
interesting
it.
question. Yeah,
It's expensive, and it doesn't work out.
no,
Now I
but
ask.
not yeah. Now you just putting noodles in the kitchen or in the refrigerator with my name on it. It's
Oh, you
nice
got
for
those, did
me.
you?
Yeah.
I'm glad you found them.
Yeah. Another thing is I don't know if you remember. You probably do. It was a while. It was during this last 2 year window where I was talking to you about something that I needed you to adjust. And it was when I was still in the heat of like, what the hell is going on? How am I sorting this through? Like, what do I do with this? And that's a lot for me to manage. It's a lot for me to navigate. I'm trying to adjust basically my entire state of living. And I was sharing something with you that would be very helpful for you to do to assist me in that. And that would help um, us be more successful as a couple. And you said, okay, yeah, I can do that, but I'm going to need you to remind me.
Oh, I tell you that all the time because in order to be fluid, I need to get reminded, but I also need to keep it in the back of my head so you don't be reminded. But I'm getting better with it, you
So
know.
my other second of that question is, I had to take a moment. I remember I walked away from you because I'm like, okay, because again, I naturally just take everybody's things and say, of course I can do that for you. I'll remind you. And then I remembered in my head, I'm like, no, I barely have enough capacity to remind myself right now. I cannot coach you. And so there's been a few times through our relationship, because I do coach humans for a living, a lot of men, where we've had those moments where I've had to say, it's funny because you don't want me to coach you either. Like that's not the desire, but in those
And I never
moments,
want you to do things for me either. So when I ask, it's always the wrong thing.
but I just mean like, how did that feel when I said, no, actually, I can't remind you.
Good,
I need you to do it.
good.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
That's so much easier than you going out and doing it and killing yourself and be sour.
Yeah.
I'm a happy answer there. Good.
Okay.
All right, hand it over. I mean, yeah, I have no problem with that. I'd rather you say that than the alternative.
Yeah.
And no matter how harsh you think it sounds a lot better to me. My ears like that better.
Well, and as somebody who, like we talked about earlier, does have that piece of her that feels bad all the time, and it's getting better, but with that, that comes along with it. It's a big deal for me to have said, no, actually, I cannot remind you of that. I need you to be a big boy and remind yourself of that.
And that's a big piece of understanding the fact that you can't help others unless you help yourself. And
Yeah.
it's not independent drive.
Mhm.
Other people can help by doing nothing. By doing nothing, meaning that's you doing nothing, throwing it back at that person.
Yeah.
Because doing nothing for you, not involving that, has a domino effect on the other end of what you're trying to deal with. So,
Mhm.
I mean, doing nothing's sometimes the best.
Yeah.
Throw it right back at that person and say, you can't do it, that's yours.
Yeah.
Happy to take that every time.
I think the reason for me asking that was one, like that's not something we've actually talked about, but I also think it's important for other people to hear, both when women and men, because a lot of people don't speak up. They don't speak about anything. And then they're like, this guy didn't do XYZ what I needed. And it's like, you didn't tell him what you needed. And what I've learned, I think, the most in our relationship, and we have kind of grown like up together in a way, which probably feels weird to everyone else considering the age difference. But like the man you were at 43 when I met you is very different than the man you are now.
God, I hope so.
Very, very different. Everything's evolved. The business, the way you deal with employees, that was something I was thinking about actually. So let's flash to a moment where you had fired all of your employees. Thank God. It was like way overdue. And you wanted Christian to come back and work for you. So Christian is his son, and who I have a pretty good relationship with. And Tony's like, I don't know, like I really want him to come, but I don't want to like hurt hurt what he's got, or I don't want us to fight, or whatever, right? And at that point, Christian had grown up a lot too. So you guys working together again would be a different dynamic. And I remember you asking me to talk to him for you before he would come work to see if he would come work for you.
Because he would believe that what you said to him is that it's not the same dynamic and the same atmosphere, and it isn't. So,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I was moving warehouses. There's just one of me, and I moved an entire warehouse to another, doing work, and then coming back. I don't think I slept for 3 days or 3 weeks, one or the other. It was a blur, but it worked out in the end.
But I think my reason for bringing it up is that I feel like that was a really intelligent move on your end to set that relationship up. And the reason, again, this is a complex relationship with your child, and you know he's skilled at his job and you can trust him, so you want him to come work for you. So then you add in that dynamic too. And he got to see and experience a very different version of his father.
And I got to see a different version of my son. The reason we weren't clicking in all levels is nepotism plays no part in the game when you're working for somebody, and also in turn I was a little bit harder on him for the infractions that was going on, but because to show that there is no nepotism, so it's a double-edged sword. So he had a less than happy. It was a souring experience
Yeah,
for
the
him,
first time.
first time, and I get it. I understand it was for me too, but a few years under the belt, and both of us a little bit older, some better thought patterns. Here we are.
Yeah. What I love the most is I see the things that you and I have worked on and built together now play out in your relationships with other people, but especially your kids. And it's really cool to see.
It's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, but you
and positive. It's all positive.
Yeah, it's great. So, is there anything that you think about this present Operation B world that I still feel like I'm kind of tipping my toe in it. I guess probably the last 2 months I've been able to do more. Is there any um, reflection on that or anything that you've been seeing that you'd like to add to the conversation?
The one thing is that it's you that knows, and nobody else. And what I recognize, maybe so off base. It's like when somebody has professional advice, and a non-professional throws in their 2 bits. Well, the non-professional is a non-professional for a reason.
Yeah.
And casual observations sometimes could set you in a different direction when the casual observation could be interpreted wrong or way off base. So my thought process is, or where do I see that going, is by how you react and how happy you are with what's going on. That's my answer. And you already know that things aren't working, you're happy in this. And so then when I learn those things, to endorse them or reinforce those positive things. And by the way, that last thing, that's, you stay away from that. That's kind of what you're taking better information there, and also taking better control of understanding that you are the person. You need a rebounder. You ask precise questions, and you'll get precise answers.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, I don't know.
That's nice. It's definitely a work in progress, and I do appreciate it. I will tell people often, I think a big part of it is you are a great supporter, and you let me be in the mess of it all as much by myself as I need to be, and as much with you as I need you to be there. And I think that's a partner piece where whether it's a chronic illness or anything hard that someone's going through, I feel it's very important that we remember that, yes, the way our partners behave and things they do affect us. And there's a time and a place for that to take that personally, but most of the time you shouldn't take it personally because it's their experience.
I don't think you should really ever take it too personally at all, unless it's directly affecting and harming you.
I think it's directly pointed at you.
If the gun's pointed at you, then we have a problem.
Sure.
So meaning that if the direction of the conversation and the words are malicious and they're sharp and they're cutting, then that needs to cease and desist, because that's being directed towards you. But otherwise, let that person say. And that's a hard thing for me. For learning that one is, you got to sort this out you first. I got all these thoughts and answers I think that'll help, and you stop it.
Well, I want to wrap up, so I want to ask you
Where's the paper?
If you could give, my gift wrapping. I love gift wrapping.
No, you do.
If there's one piece of advice you could give to someone who's in a relationship with somebody who's dealing with some sort of chronic illness or healing, what would it be?
Find yourself a professional in the field of where you believe that illness and that illness and that chronic feeling is coming from. Try to isolate it to a physician that can help you, and that's going to most generally be a referral from your GP. The other thing is that you gotta do the work. If you don't put in the work, you're not going to get the results. And as hard as it is to put the work in, it's even harder if you don't.
Yeah.
So putting in the work and it's not going to happen every day. And a failure of doing it, yes, not doing it yesterday, the day before, can't wear on you, because you already know what the failure is, and then you're going to find an excuse to blame it on yourself. But really, the failure is because you did too much over here. So it's really not the failure here. It's because you did too much over here. But then when you pull it all together, then, oh, okay, well, I did the right thing. I took the day down because otherwise I would have been gone for 3 days.
Yeah.
So listening to your body, that's the best thing. And if you can't remember, journal it. Put it in a book. This is what I ate. I didn't feel good here. I went to bed at this time. Now I got to go to bed this time. So it's always it's a circus of experiment. And as the circus of experiment, gets smaller and smaller, you've isolated the tent. Now you're not entertaining all these people coming into your tent expecting a circus. And now you're performing for yourself, and that's what needs to be done.
Yeah. Okay. And as the partner to somebody who's going through that, if you were speaking to somebody that is in your position,
listen. It's the only thing I can say is listen, and add, when it comes to getting medical advice, push your partner to find the best or find it for him. But here's the thing, you have to prepare him for that. You can't just say, I got you an appointment. It's like buying a pet and going, here, I bought you this dog for your birthday. No, I mean, you have to be prepared for it. So I would like to do this. What do you think? Well, I'd like to wait a little longer. I'm doing this protocol here. That's what I like to do. That's important. The exchange of information. That information highway should always be flowing. There should never be a stoplight. There should never be a merge. There should never be a yield. It should be always going 55.
All right, good. I love that. I hope somebody hears this and gets to see the dynamic, and maybe they can, whether they're the one who's sick or it's their partner that watches, can kind of get a better dynamic for, number one, knowing they're not alone, and it is hard and it is a up and down all the time, and maybe grab us a piece of advice from here to help them.
Right. And remember, you don't have to have it to understand it. You can try go get it, but I don't suggest that either.
Yeah, right. Let's not do that. As always, guys, thank you so much for being here. If you like this episode and you feel like anyone could benefit from it, please hit that share button, send it over to them, and make sure that you have liked and subscribed, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to Operation B, the podcast. To support this message and to support the show, please make sure that you like, follow, and share the podcasts wherever you enjoy listening. And be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you for being here, and see you next time.